a congressional room where the President of the United States gives his State of the Union message in that particular room where the Congress and the Senate both sit. You'll see it on television at night. On both sides of the podium, most people are watching the speaker in the podium and listening to his dribble. But no one seems to be aware that on both sides of the podium are two 12-foot high fasces, the symbol of world corporate fascism. This is, to my way of thinking, absolutely appalling. I'm amazed at how many people do not realize the symbols and the emblems of totalitarian dictatorship that pervade the Western world. And don't ever forget for one moment that the money, the grease, and the power that put Adolf Hitler into power came from America and Britain and Europe. Families with money financed Adolf Hitler. If you begin to, and think back, the older people here will understand what I'm saying. Some of the younger people will not appreciate this, but if you go back to the 30s in Europe, Germany, first of all, was one of the most educated and most highly advanced cultures in Europe. They were not stupid. Germans are many things, but stupid was not one of them. But after the First World War, they were totally broke, as were many nations, including America. That war caused economic hardships for everyone except the guys who made the money. But Germany was absolutely starving in the streets, quite literally. And on the scene came a man who was later to become known as Adolf Hitler. And he began arousing the emotions of the people that we need to clean this mess up. We've been had. We need to get back our greatness that was Germany and bring back the greatness of the Germanic people, etc., etc. And he began promoting himself, and he got elected to a small office and began to grow in power. And about the mid-30s, mid to late 30s, he began to grow quickly. And overnight, from a country and a people that were starving in the streets, and a couple of very short years, Hitler was able to build the largest, most powerful military industrial complex the Western world has ever seen. Where did he get the money? Okay? Consequently, I am of the opinion that for far too long, we in the West have conveniently overlooked the anti-Semitism which pervades our culture. And how I got on this subject, I don't know, but I have so many things bother me. This is one of them. This is not only a malady in itself, it is indicative of a continual malady the human race has, of racism and hatred for people who don't look like you, and a disrespect for people who do not live in your country or go to your church. And consequently, I think that it's about time that we start thinking in terms of a world of people living together and showing respect for each other and for our elders and for those things which are far older than our culture. I think that there's an awful lot of people beginning to appreciate that principle. I mentioned the word church. You know where the word church comes from? So many people are proud to tell you that they're churchgoers. I remember that I got a story that keeps coming up in my mind. I got to get rid of it. The child comes out with his father in front of the church, and he sees a big statue of a soldier in bronze, and the kid says to his dad, what is that statue for? And he said, oh, that's to commemorate the men who died in the service. And he said, which one, the 9 o'clock or the 11 o'clock? So the word church, incidentally, is an interesting word. It's an English word, okay? It's an English word, church. It comes from a Scottish word, kirk. That's why we have one of the old hymns, Kirk of the Valley. Kirk in Scottish is church in English. But kirk in Scottish comes from a Greek word, Circe, Circe. And Circe in the Greek mythology was the mother Circe, Mother Circe, who was able to put a spell on people and to bring them into her house and change men into pigs and eat them. Of course. So, I don't know what that tells you. So I'm just saying that it's interesting words. Words are very interesting terms and symbols. I'm fascinated by the world of terms and symbols and words. Anyway, back to this whole concept of the eye and the pyramid, the dollar bill, and why the plateau is becoming more and more prevalent in Western civilization media. And I didn't even finish with the anti-Semitism yet, because I have more to say on that. We're not through with that yet. Interesting, Manly Palmer Hall did a little half a page on the eye and the dollar bill, which I would like to read you a sentence or two, because I think it has a very powerful message for us. Given the fact that this is an interpretation in the West, the eye itself being a symbol of the sun in some quarters of the ancient world, the eye of Horus was the eye of the sun. But the whole concept of the sun bringing light into the world is paramount. The whole idea of man being enlightened by the divine presence in the universe, or the sun, what we call the sun, he makes the point that the all-seeing eye represents the eternal watchfulness of the infinite. An apex atop the platform, incidentally, is 30 feet square. That's interesting. Is a symbol of the unfinished work of the redemption of humanity. Imperfect man, incomplete without the apex of his divine nature. The all-seeing eye on the dollar bill is not situated on top of the pyramid, but floats above it, for man has not yet affected his spiritual union with his material self. The pyramid structure represents the building of society to a gradual perfection of human endeavor crowned by the divine. Now, be this an interpretation of Western man or not, I think it applies here. That ultimately what we as a human species are to work toward is a gradual uplifting in our spirit, in our consciousness, in our intellectual ability to comprehend spiritual things, and I think that this is an adequate symbol for that work that is referred to by the Freemasons as the great work of enlightening the world. As Alan Alford did publicly a few days ago, made a 180-degree turn in his understanding of things, I choose this day to do the same. So I am going to publicly say, and I'm saying it not only for the audience here, but to be on video from this day on, as a witness against me. I am. When I have had for the longest time a loathing for the concept of secret societies, because I felt that if what you're doing is important and good, then it should be known by everyone. It shouldn't be a secret society. And then also, when contemplating the basis for modern-day Freemasonry, the Scottish and York Rite Freemasonry of the Western world, the basis for York and Scottish Rite Freemasonry being the British Grand Lodge, the mother Grand Lodge of all Western Freemasonry is the British Grand Lodge. I was not particularly impressed with the British royalty or its Masonic secret societies and orders of power. I believe them to have been racist and having agendas that they have not shared with all of us. And so my feeling was that Freemasonry was something that I was very unhappy with. But in point of fact, I have grown in my understanding to appreciate that at the time that the orders of Masonry were in their infancy in about the 10th, 11th, 12th century, the church dominated, as I said, all of Europe. And it was not a religious institution as much as it was a very powerful political institution that had in mind the domination of the world, whether anyone wished it or not. Therefore, the Vatican dominated, and the Vatican at that time was somewhat different than the Vatican today. Not much, but somewhat. And it was very dangerous, as one politician has observed. It's very dangerous to be right when your country is wrong. It was very dangerous in those days, in the Middle Ages, to speak of and to wish to educate other people and to have an open mind. The brain is like a parachute. It doesn't work if it's not open. But during that time, open minds were not in vogue. There was a power that was accepted throughout the world, and that was the Vatican, the papacy, the church. But at that time, there were those men who were the scientists, the thinkers, the philosophers, and they saw fit to protect themselves by secret associations, which I can understand. And then being able to have a cursory understanding, and I'm looking forward to having a better understanding before I leave, because I have not had a chance to talk with Hakim the way I want to, but having a cursory understanding of the secret brotherhood, of the ancient priesthood, the ancient brotherhood, tells me that true wisdom has been carried down for thousands of years, for millennia, by a handful of individuals that were worthy to carry the wisdom. Because it appears to me now that to give this kind of spiritual wisdom to modern day man, or to mankind in general, so many people are not ready to use that kind of knowledge correctly and for the right purposes, and using it in love to help the human family to grow, but would misuse it, as we have seen in America, everywhere in the world that Europeans go. We see the misuse of power and prestige and money. Well, what more powerful tool in the hands of a man than secret knowledge, wisdom of the ancients? So I am at this moment saying that I have a different view than that which I have expressed before, and I have a high respect for and don't ever forget for one moment that the money, the grease, and the power that put Adolf Hitler into power came from America and Britain and Europe. Families with money financed Adolf Hitler. If you begin to, and think back, the older people here will understand what I'm saying. Some of the younger people will not appreciate this, but if you go back to the 30s in Europe, Germany, first of all, was one of the most educated and most highly advanced cultures in Europe. They were not stupid. Germans are many things, but stupid was not one of them. But after the First World War, they were totally broke, as were many nations, including America. That war caused economic hardships for everyone except the guys who made the money. But Germany was absolutely starving in the streets, quite literally. And on the scene came a man who was later to become known as Adolf Hitler. And he began arousing the emotions of the people that we need to clean this mess up. We've been had. We need to get back our greatness. Sides of the podium are two 12-foot high fasces, the symbol of world corporate fascism. This is, to my way of thinking, absolutely appalling. I'm amazed at how many people do not realize the symbols and the emblems of totalitarian dictatorship that pervade the Western world. A congressional room where the President of the United States gives his State of the Union message, in that particular room where the Congress and the Senate both sit. You'll see it on television at night. On both sides of the podium, most people are watching the speaker in the podium and listening to his dribble. But no one seems to be aware that on both sides